President Emerson Mnangagwa has hit back hard on his critics. As the president of the party of Zanu PF, the ruling party in Zimbabwe, he came out in the recent Politburo meeting that Zanu PF, which is the top leadership, had, and it wasn't great, the outcomes for those who've been working and speaking against him. This follows the recent conversations where there are two factions within Zanu PF, one that is saying 2030 President Mnangagwa should still be leading, which means his term, which will be ending in 2028, should be extended, they say, by 2 years, but we don't know after 2030 what happens. And then there's another faction, so being led by fellow Zanu PF comrades and war veterans, which was saying we are not going to tolerate that. This current president, which is President Emerson Mnangagwa, has failed. And we are not happy with him. He needs to go. But not when his term finishes in 2028. He needs to go now. This was Comrade Geza and his fellows who were speaking in that direction. Following that, there was a lot of movement within the country of Zimbabwe. And there's a journalist called Blessed Mhlanga, who's currently still in custody for providing a platform that was being used by the Comrade Geza, who was coming from that faction that was pushing for the immediate removal of President Mnangagwa from office. Blessed Mhlanga was arrested and is in custody for providing a platform that transmitted information which was inciting violence in the country. He was doing his job as a journalist. So we also know that the leader of the faction, which is Comrade Geza, that was speaking against the president, that he was being sought after by the police to be arrested. But we do not have any confirmation of him having been arrested. Of course, there is speculation around, is he really a free man? Or are they really looking for him? Or they have him somewhere? This comes out because there were some photos that circulated at some point that were being claimed to be recent, but one cannot say for real. But let's come back to the response by President Mnangagwa. So President Mnangagwa says, we are not going to be tolerating within the organization people that are sowing disunity. This is at the beginning of the Politburo. And as a party, we have people within the organization that are sowing divisions who have been infiltrated. And we need to deal with these rogue elements. That was a very strong response and signal of what was to come. But then what happens a few days later is we see the Secretary of Legal Affairs within Zanu PF, Patrick Chinamasa, coming out and speaking to the country, to the party, and to the media about this unity issue and disciplinary processes that have been followed within Zanu PF to deal with rogue elements, to deal with indiscipline. One of the key things that comes out from that is he acknowledges that actually you have got factions within the party. And it actually becomes clear that within the party there is no longer a matter of there was just this one individual who was speaking out of 10 and saying that President Mnangagwa must go. But actually really that we have a grouping that we are dealing with of people that have been speaking against the leadership. And they have been speaking against the leadership in the public. So, Comrade Geza and a whole host of other comrades of Zanu PF was expelled from the party. They are no longer members of Zanu PF. Now, this is kind of a bit of a repeat of what we have seen within Zanu PF in the past. There's 2014 and there's 2017. But this time around, when the Politburo started and the president was talking about this disunity and, people that are sowing divisions within the party, he was flanked by the top leadership of the organization. Also, when Patrick Chinamasa comes to announce the expulsion of Blessed Geza, he goes through a process of explaining the disciplinary processes and the disciplinary structure of Zanu PF. Key out of that is he explains to the extent of showing that the disciplinary committee is headed by the chairperson of the party, the Minister of Defense, who is Opam Chinguri. The reason for explaining this structure that he did was to make sure that he sends a clear message that this is the organization, the core of the organization's leadership is set and agreed. So he says the outcomes of the DC processes is pronouncing the expulsion of these members. But over and above that, he says these outcomes have been endorsed by the top leadership, by the Politburo. So it's not a matter of there's some individuals who set aside. It's not a matter of saying it's only just the president. No, it's a matter of saying the organization through its ranks have set and decided this is what is happening. Now, so we have confirmation of this existence of the factions. We have confirmation of the fact that the vice president who was being supported by Comrade Geza and those who were saying ED must go is still within the party. We see him even when the president is speaking. This kind of reminds one of 2004 and 2005, those who know about the Cholocho Declaration, which President Mugabe spoke about at some point, about where the fallout between our current president of Emerson Mnangagwa and Professor Jonathan Moyo started. Because when the Cholocho Declaration happened, it was a group of people that came together who were supporting the current president, Emerson Mnangagwa, and saying that he should be the one who should come in to be the vice president. But now, when Maime Juru emerged, President Mugabe explains and says, the current president, Emerson Mnangagwa, kind of forsake or those who were supporting him, who ended up being chased out of the party, some of them, and fell out of favor. And that's where Professor Jonathan Moyo was then offended. And it's a long-term grudge where now he says, President Mugabe says, because this one exposed these ones and did not come back to support them. So it's almost like what is happening now. But we do not know what has happened behind closed doors. Was there a negotiation? Where is Blessed Geza? Because it could be just that because, comrades might have sat down together and found each other. So we know the platform that was being used and the journalist who was publishing what was coming from Blessed Geza is currently behind bars. Blessed Geza himself is currently not known where he is and has been expelled out of Zanu PF. So one would be forgiven for saying that currently this ED must go discussion has been quashed. Of course, something could happen in the future, but for the time being, it seems that that discussion has no traction. If you are going to poke a crocodile, you need to be sure that you are going to eliminate it at that point. Because when it responds, chances are survival will be very difficult. And one could say this is what have happened to Comrade Geza in terms of his stature within Zanu PF. How his personal life will be impacted is still yet to be seen. Until we see him coming out in the open or hearing what could be happening, we can't say for sure. If you remember when we did an analysis of the military tanks that were seen in the streets of Harare for the first time since 2017, we said that whoever sent the tanks on the street is flexing the muscle. It's a show of power and control. We do not know who sent the tanks in the streets. But we would be forgiven for making the assumption that the powers that be, maybe, because there's definitely a winner out of that. If you also recall, when we were doing that analysis, we were saying, it is possible that whoever wins out of this does not do a winner takes all. They can win and say, okay, you stay in that seat so that we manage the dynamics and the optics. But are you still really in power? One could say that it is clear that the president, he's really in power at the moment. He is, because we can see him freely going all over the country. And we have actually seen photos and videos of him in events showing that his life is normal. We have even seen photos of Wicknow and his bride with the president. We don't know whether the photos are recent, but it seems from what was being said that. So at the moment, it is safe to say that this discussion has slowed down. But time will tell, because we also have a time in 2017 when a vice president skips the border, goes out of the country, and things happened afterwards. But the tricky bit with what is happening right now is those who were speaking and saying the president must go, their candidate that they were pushing forward is still being seen with the president every day and is still sitting in that office. It would be interesting to hear what others think, but what we try to do is not to use rumor and things like that, but to use the facts of what we see.